Master Duel has a lot of cards Konami has deemed too powerful for the TCG. On this series, we will be taking a look at the banned cards in Master Duel and determining if they deserve the ban or are simply overhated. Welcome back to another episode of Why is this card banned in the TCG? Yeah, we're gonna go with that one, sure. We are talking today about Isolde. Anyway, this one. Two Tales of the Noble Knights, which is a link card that requires two warrior monsters, and what it does is on summon adds a warrior monster, can't use its effects, and on ignition, right? You can send equip spells to the graveyard as cost to summon a warrior with the same level as the number of equips sent. Meaning that, you get a whole bunch of advantage by sending equip cards, and you get to special summon a warrior monster from your deck. Now, here's the thing. Isolde, as a card, has seen a ton of play throughout history, and has mostly seen play in heinous, criminal archetypes, or more specifically decks, centered around doing some of the most broken combos in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the reason for that is because it doesn't have any locks. It's very powerful when its effect resolves, because it gives you a ton of cards, both in grave, and it can get you any specific card on your field. Most of the time, it was paired with one card in particular, Armageddon Knight. Armageddon Knight would just send a dark monster, and this would allow you to do a bunch of different things, right? In fact, I even have a video on this very channel playing Infernoble, utilizing Isolde to summon Armageddon Knight, and doing heinous things. It was very silly, it was very comical, but that being said, it was also a very distinct deck in the sense that its combo was very unique and difficult. It was a wild, 300-step combo. It wasn't very good. That being said, Isolde received a ban in the TCG prior to the release, actually after the release, of the new Infernoble support, giving them access to Museum, the new Angelica, and most notably, Charlemagne. I'm going to call him Charlemagne. He's Charlemagne. He's always Charlemagne. I don't know why he's not. It's very frustrating. But Emperor Charles the Great, or Charlemagne, is a link monster that is just a spell trap negate. However, it also copies the effect of the original Charles, which gives you the ability to destroy a card when it becomes equipped, which means that on top of that, it also is removal. It's very useful. So with the new support, this archetype received wide usage in the metagame and ended up causing Isolde to be banned. However, I will say it actually wasn't until after Infernoble basically fell out of the metagame that it actually received its ban, and it was because it was still doing heinous criminal activity with a bunch of FTKs and stuff like that. If you haven't seen, there was a very, very popular YCS feature match where Jeff Leonard, if I'm not mistaken, was playing an Isolde Exodia combo, and he would just find all the pieces of Exodia, utilizing Isolde as its as a starter, I guess extender, in order to do the combo, ending on all 5 Exodia pieces in the hand. It's a very interesting combo, but it was still an FTK, and that is generally when that card got banned. Still, mostly because of Infernoble, but also because of a myriad of other FTKs and such that this card enabled. So let's quickly go through the card by card and the explanation. If you don't know how Infernoble works, it centers around utilizing equip cards in order to generate additional advantage for the archetype and summon more powerful boss monsters. Things like Gearfried, things like Charles, and things like Charlemagne. With that, we have ourselves the 3 Renaud, which on summon allows you, or it can special summon itself if you control a fire warrior. On special summon, it adds a fire warrior or an equip back to the hand, and it becomes a level 1 tuner, which is very important. We're also playing a whole bunch of other Infernobles, that being Ogier, Oliver, Maugus, and Turpin, as well as Ricardetto, which is another level 1. We're also playing the other normal summon in the deck, that being a Neospace Connector, which on normal special summons out the Aqua Dolphin, which can then discard a card and look at the opponent's hand, either looking at it just for kicks and giggles, or to rip a hand trap out of their hand. For example, something like a Droll, or something like a Ghost Bell, because at that point they probably would have used Ash, let's be honest. Anyway, that being said, we're also playing a ton of Searchers, Heritage, Durandal, Museum, and Rhoda, all searchers for the archetype. Myriad of searchers. We also are playing a ton of additional equips, notably noble arm equips, such as Arfidutor, Joyous, and Almus, all of which have various different effects tied to them that generate more advantage for fire warriors. We're also playing Angelica's Angelic Ring, which is very important to the end board. It's one of the ways that you can actually stop things like Super Polymerization, Droplet, Ultimate Slayer, Dark Ruler, etc. Because what it says is each turn, negate the effect of the opponent's first spell, card, or effect that resolves. Meaning, if you negate it via the effect of Charlemagne, you can then utilize Angelica to interact with things like Droplet or previously mentioned cards. So, because this negates activations, I believe, negate the activation, it can then, keep the Angelic Ring for those more powerful cards. It's very silly, and it's one of the reasons why the end board was so powerful and is basically an FTK. There's very, very little that you can do to interact with it. We're also playing notable, powerful equip spells in Living Fossil, which is just a monster reborn, and Gearblade, which just adds itself back. It's very nice. As for the rest of the cards, they're pretty simple, just ways to enable the combo. Things like Ash Blossom, things like Called By and Triple Tack, as well as just other cards that are fairly decent right now. Fairly decent. It's Fua and Maxi. We're also playing Nib. That's it for the main deck. As for the extra deck, it's pretty simple. We're playing a bunch of synchros that we can go into. Roland is special summoned off of the Angelica. Angelica on summon searches out the field spell and has the ability, when it's targeted, to tag out into the Roland and send a guide to the graveyard. Very nice. We're also playing the Charles as well. We're playing 2 of this because sometimes you make 2 of them. Realistically, you could get away with 1. And then we're also playing Baron. We're also playing, of course, Charlemagne, which is one of the few Link ones that I actually think is good and well designed because it requires Charles, the original Charles, equipped with an equip card, which is pretty funny. So at the very least, it's just a upgrade to your monster. It's pretty good. Of course, we're also playing 2 Isolde, the 1 Ferocious Flame, the 1 SP, the 1 Promethean, and the 1 Amblo. Let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performed. Alrighty, here we are going first, and as you can see, our hand is, it's got 2 normal summons, but it does have extension as well. We're going to start off here with the Neospatian in order to add, or special summon out the Aqua Dolphin, looking at the opponent's hand, and seeing that they have no points of interaction here. We're just going to take 5 there because we couldn't actually send anything or destroy anything. But that's fine. We're going to go Isolde, dump 4, and special summon out Ogier. Ogier effect is going to activate in order to dump to the grave the Gearblade, or Gearfried. Since we already have the field spell, we can just equip the Durandal and grab Renowned. Renowned can then add back that Gearfried, and then it can special summon itself. Well, of course, we know that they don't have anything, but it is still nice to have that additional monster negation. Out comes Angelica. Angelica effect is going to activate. We're going to grab another Museum, which is not a hard once per turn for either of its effects. That will come up. We're going to go for the Roland here, activating, or after activating the effect. And now we can special summon it in order to go to Charles. Roland is going to equip, and then we can link off into a Charlemagne, and then activate the effect of the Charlemagne, equipping the Charles. Here we can go for the second Museo, which is going to add Durandal to our hand once again, and then special summon it that Charles. We're going to equip it with the additional equip spell that we had, which was the Almace, which adds another Fire Warrior monster back to our hand, the Renown. Equipping another guy. Now we can go for the Turpin, linking off into SP Little Knight, just to add basically insult to injury. We're going to equip, notably, with our already equipped monster, the Maugus, which, when sent to the graveyard, is going to shuffle back 3 guys and draw a card, and the Angelic Ring. Again, previously mentioned, this will negate things like Super Poly and what have you. Also, our Angelica comes back. If it's ever targeted for anything, attack, or just with an effect, it gets to tag out, which is pretty nice. They're going to go for the Last Judge. That's fine. Activate the Man, promptly negate that one, as well as sending the Maugus. Maugus is going to shuffle back 3 and draw a card. Pretty solid. We draw into Rhoda, which is funny. They're going to attempt to draw 2 off of the effects of Pot of Desires, which is promptly negated as well, and my opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes. They had 1 unknown, but all of the other cards in there just didn't do anything. They had, like, Judgment and Strike, or Warning, or something of that nature. So, yeah, none of those did anything. We could literally just go combat and know that they don't have anything, so good game. Alrighty, here we are, once again, going first, and our hand is pretty solid once again. So, let's see what we can accomplish. We're going to start off here with the Ogier. Ogier is going to send to the graveyard once again our Gearfried. Gearfried is then going to be special summon or added back to the hand off of the Renaud like normal, right? So out comes Gearfried, pretty solid. We have this before any form of interaction from the opponent. Great. So there's that. Notably, I'm fairly certain. No, this one they didn't have anything. But this does interact fairly favorably against things like Izuna or Duel or what have you. So that's pretty nice. Anyway, out comes Angelica for the Roland. Roland is then going to be equipped so that we can special summon our Turpin, but it also triggers the Joy. Joy, if the monster equipped with it is sent to the graveyard, you could special summon a Fire Warrior from hand, so that's what we wanted to do here. So we're going to special summon the Ricardetto, which is going to special summon out the Renaud. Now we can actually go Isolde. This is one of the benefits of Isolde. It's a very, very powerful card, not just as a starter for the combo, but also as an additional extender. For example, here, I don't have the equips in Grave for me to get Angelica or do a bunch of things from that. So what I can actually do is just make Isolde halfway through the combo after having already put Gearfried onto the field, and now I can actually just search an additional extension and send a whole bunch of powerful spells to the graveyard. Most notably, Gearblade and the Angelic Ring. Out comes SP Little Knight. I'm stupid. I don't have the link zones for this. So what I actually have to end up doing is just banishing my my SP Little Knight. Oops. Either way, Malgus is going to draw us a card, which that's a phenomenal draw because we can grab up the Museum here. We're going to go for the Roland here in order to equip and go into the Charlemagne. Charlemagne is going to equip the Emperor Charles, reborning it and equipping it again in order to make a second Charlemagne. Again, both of these can activate their effect to negate. They just both can't activate the effect to pop a card. However, it gets better because guess what? We're going to search out another card. We put back the Joyous. We're going to grab it again. And then we are going to special summon out by pitching the Fireflint Lady in order to summon out Baron. Yes, we still can make Baron in this deck as well, because even though we are warrior locked, this happens to be your warrior for some reason. I mean, I guess, what else is it going to be? Either way, we are going to equip in order to have the Angelic Ring live, and notably, all of the Infernobles also have effects. This monster now can't be destroyed by a card effect, which is pretty important. On top of that, it can't be targeted. So there's that. Pretty solid. Anyway, my opponent's going to do a thing. I'm going to say no to that. Because, again, we want to kind of negate any spells that would go through because of Angelic Ring. So, they're going to activate the effect of the Fire Sanctuary. I'm going to once again negate it. At the very least, they're playing a base deck. They're going to go for the Diabell Star. I'm going to again negate. And then they're going to activate the Volcanics. I'm going to allow it. Out comes the Garunix. Garunix is going to special summon itself, and I am promptly going to pop. Or negate and destroy. They're going to go to combat here. We're going to dump the Turpin in order to summon another Roland. They're just going to crash. Out comes the guy, and this game is open and closed. Again, it's pretty much an FTK if you get to make this whole combo. And as you can see, I have such an obscene amount of damage on field. 18,000 damage. Now, to be fair, my opponent could potentially have some form of interaction here, right? I mean, they have Garunix, except for the fact that this is not at once per duel or anything of that nature. Yeah, we just send another guy, negate its effects, and now they don't have anything. We just go to combat. Game over. Good game. Probably. Okay. One thing I do want to talk about real quick is the fact that this deck is not exactly great at going second. Of course, I'm showing you only going first duels, but that is something to keep in mind, is that this deck in particular, and most Isolde-centric decks, are not very good at going second. So, there's that. That being said, the decks are still good enough. And Infernoble, I've played a ton of, and have had a fairly decent time going second with, because, simply put, there's just a lot that you have access to, right? There's a lot of powerful lines. Having access to, like, Gearfried is very strong going second. This is a very powerful card. And on top of that, if the opponent doesn't have the ability to, you know, stop something like Angelica by having a non-targeted effect negation, it's pretty difficult to actually interact with, which means that you just generate a ton of advantage off of individual cards. It's not the most powerful, but it is something of note. Anyway, as we're going through this combo, I still haven't used Renaud. I draw into Nib, which is funny. Regardless, we are going to special summon another guy, and then we're going to add back the Joy. At this point, my opponent sees the writing on the wall. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because I know that my opponent had Izuna in hand, because we activated Gear Freed, as soon as the Azuna would have hit the field, we could have just negated it, and they wouldn't have had anything. So that's one of the advantages as well to the Isolde and Gear Freed and all of that stuff. You don't really activate anything in hand. It's kind of funny. Renout doesn't activate in hand, so there's that. It's pretty interesting at the very least. Alrighty, so we're back with Isolde. How is it? Is it capable of coming back in the TCG, or should it remain banned? Here's the thing. Isolde is part of a lot of very silly FTK style combos. It does some very heinous things like the Exodia FTKs and what have you, but a lot of the FTK enablers, specifically within Master Duel and also within the TCG, have been removed. There's not a ton of ways to just FTK the opponent, and because in the TCG you have games 2 and 3 as well, an inconsistent FTK is not nearly as frustrating because not only can you side deck against them, you also just have more games. You're guaranteed at least once to go first or something of that nature. So for the most part, it's not that bad in the TCG to have some of these more inconsistent FTKs around because most likely they're not going to do anything. In Master Duel, on the other hand, most of those cards are just straight up not available, right? Again, things like Apo are very powerful and are one of the benefits that Isolde would have in most games, because yeah, you could go Isolde, you could summon out some guys, and then you could make Apo, and then continue from there, because Isolde does happen to be a Link 2 that generates another guy. It means that you're only one additional body away from making Apollosa, which matters substantially. One of the old combos that I did, as previously mentioned, with Infernoble, centered around actually summoning Apo as part of the combo, because it had these specific Link arrows that you needed. That being said, Apo and a lot of the other problematic cards that Isolde is a part of have been removed from Master Duel. So for the most part, I feel like both in the TCG and in Master Duel, this card is fine. Would I be okay with it being banned? Yeah, I just don't see it as a problem. It's fine. It does still do basically FTKs, as you saw. A lot of those end boards were basically unbeatable. Maybe you could beat them, but it's very, very difficult because of things like Angelic Ring, which are made possible due to Isolde, right? If you actually have to draw or search or something of that nature, Angelic Ring, which by the way is not actually searchable in this deck, there's not really an effective way to search it. You can add it back from grave, but you can't really search it. So if you had to get it into rotation by sending it to the grave via other means, it would be a lot more difficult. So that's one of the things that Isolde does in particular that makes it so that basically you end on an unbreakable, unbeatable board. All in all though, I will say, for the most part, I don't think this deck, or this card in particular, is a problem. I could see it come back to 3 in both the TCG and Master Duel. However, it's also fine being banned. It's in that weird middle ground where there's not really a reason to ban it, but it's also extremely frustrating when you do see it. So, I don't know. I'll also just say, it's good to stick around. Anyway, I'm going to call it quits there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. Let me know down below if you guys agree with my assessment, or if this card needs to be banned, or it's totally fine. Whatever you guys think, let me know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.